Hi, I'm cooking one simple recipe that hopefully is putting you closer, one step closer to better health. Hi, my name is Judy Mateski. I am a registered dietitian with Athens Nutrition, and I am happy to be back today. We're going to be making these apple palm pies. So let's go ahead and get started. I have to admit, I'm actually changing this recipe live with you. I was going back and forth with how to make these, and I've tried them several different ways. And now I'm going to try something new, and I'll talk to you about why I'm making that change. But these are absolutely adorable, and I'll show you the finished product. But they really do fit in the palm of your hand, and that's why they're called apple palm pies. It's from a chef that I follow. Her name is Nadi Hussein. She has a couple of BBC Food Network shows and a bunch of videos on YouTube. And I love this concept. And I thought it's just taking an apple pie, but turning it on its head a little bit. So you're making an apple pie, it's all great, but you have to, either make the crust, buy the crust, peel the apples, slice the apples, bake the pie. It's a process, right? And I also am thinking from a health perspective, how do we do apple pie that could be easy, but also not so high in that butter fat, which I know butterfat's great, and I know it's delicious, and I think it certainly has room within a healthy diet. But because of the saturated fat level of butter, and for many of you who are trying to lower your cholesterol or trying to be super careful about that, the butter fat is butter is just really high in saturated fat, and it adds up really quickly, even just in 1 tablespoon. So we're going to talk a little bit about why I made some changes for this recipe, because the concept I love, I thought I needed to change. All right, so it's a couple of really quick, easy hacks, and it's kind of like cooking out of your pantry. So we're using jarred applesauce instead of fresh apples. And if you can use fresh apples, that's great. But the whole idea behind this recipe that Nadia put together, which I thought was really fun, it's sort of taking pantry staples and making something that's quick and easy that the family would enjoy, whether it's a dessert or maybe just a quick little snack, without having to necessarily always peel and chop something that's fresh. Now you could, okay, absolutely. And what I have often done is I'll use the applesauce and I will chop fresh apples and put that in here along with it, which I was going to do with you today, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the straight applesauce. I did find the chunky applesauce, and that's what we want. Normally, I would tell everybody to buy your jarred or canned fruit without sugar, you just unsweeten, because this fruit is so naturally sweet. But for this, because we're making a pie and we want some sweetness, and we were saving steps, it's all in here. So, there is the sugar's in here already, and the apples are already in here for us. And I'm just going to add a few extra spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, even though this already has it in it. So I just love this concept because it's just super easy. And applesauce, unsweetened applesauce, is just a great thing to have in your pantry all the time anyway. It is apple season, so by all means, chop a fresh apple and add that to this. That would be great. Like I said, I typically do that. But we're just going to do it her kind of original way, which is just to use the jar. This is I think a 24-ounce jar of applesauce. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find that. And if you can only find the regular applesauce, maybe a cinnamon applesauce that's not chunky, then what I would do I would definitely add the fresh apples, because I think you want the texture in this. Okay, so we have a jar of applesauce. Now I'm just going to add a sprinkle of some extra nutmeg, maybe quarter of a teaspoon, half a teaspoon of some nutmeg. I'm not even going to use the fresh ground nutmeg. Normally that's what I would use, but I'm just going to use the regular nutmeg today because we're saving time. This is kind of just a little apple pie cheat, right? So pre-ground nutmeg is something that's fine. If you have pumpkin pie spice, that would be ideal. Like a teaspoon of that would be perfect. I don't have it. I was going to buy it, couldn't find it in Acme, so I just didn't get it. So I'm going to use maybe, again, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and those are only the 2 additional spices that we're going to add. I do love raisins, so I'm going to add about 1/3 of a cup of raisins, and you can leave these out if you don't like them, that's fine, but we're just going to, take this applesauce and enhance it a little bit. So a little bit of apples, and I was going to add some chopped walnuts or some chopped almonds. You can skip the nuts altogether, it's up to you. I was going to just go ahead and do the walnuts today, but then I realized that I have all of this tahini granola in my pantry, and it has pistachios in it. And I thought that'd be something kind of different. So rather than to get the crunchy texture, I was just going to add maybe 1/3 of a cup of the tahini granola that I already have made up. So we'll just add that. And that's it. So we're just going to stir this together. So this is really our apple pie filling, right? That's going to go inside of the next step. We're going to talk about that. Super easy, you know, again, you don't have to chop fresh apples. This is, you know, sometimes out of the jar or out of a can is fine, you know, especially when we're trying to cut corners or save some time. All right, I'm going to put this off to the side. Next thing we're going to use is we're using phyllo dough. And if you're not familiar with this, you're going to find this in your frozen food aisle in the supermarket. Almost every supermarket carries it. It's, you know, pretty popular in Greek and Middle Eastern cuisines. You typically are going to be layering this with a lot of butter. That's typically how phyllo is used. It is not high in fat as it is. It's just basically flour sheets of dough. And it does require a little bit of fat added to give it the crispness. Now, I'm going to just say a couple things in advance. It comes in a roll. It comes sealed. And I took this out of the freezer last night, put it in my refrigerator because it needs to be defrosted. You cannot work with it frozen. So that I just did overnight. And then it comes really sealed up. Now, phyllo dough, it's so thin and it dries out so fast. And about a half hour ago, I was like, let me just take that phyllo out. I might cut it a little bit, and just then I'll talk to you through how to cut it. And when I did that, I thought, oh no, it's going to be exposed to the air, and I do not want it to dry out. So if you're working with phyllo, you really want to keep phyllo dough covered up. And I just have it covered with the plastic that it came in, with just saran wrap or any kind of plastic wrap, because you just don't want it to dry out. It dries out very quickly because it's so thin. You're going to use, the original recipe from Nadia said she used a full box. Maybe half a box. I mean, maybe there weren't as many sheets of phyllo in hers. So I am using it's probably just half a box. So when you open it up, and this is what I went ahead and did this ahead of time because I was afraid this was going to dry out, and it still may have. But it was about as long as my cutting board here. It's a rectangle. So it's just it's a rectangle, and there's sheets. There's about 19 sheets of this super thin. And I'm going to show you the one that I did not cut. Well, I cut these in strips, but I'm going to show you how thin it is if you've never worked with phyllo. Well, this is actually 2 sheets. Oh, here's 1 sheet. So this is 1 sheet of phyllo. It is just super, super thin. And you can see as it starts to rip like that, it's already telling me that this is starting to get a little bit dry. All right, so I'm going to just kind of wrap this back up. This is the half that I probably am not going to use, but it was in a big rectangular sheet. And then what I did, I cut all the sheets together. I had them laying on here, and I took my scissors and I cut it in half. Then I cut it in quarters. Then I cut it in maybe I was going to cut it in half, but then I was going to end up with rectangles, and we're trying to get squares. So I did cut it in thirds on the long way, and I ended up with then a stack of these squares. I have no idea how big they are, but they're going to fit inside these muffin tins. So that's what I'm working with right now. But I did it ahead of time. I was going to show you how I cut them. Well, I can even show you this, because these, I have a feeling I might not be able to use these if they get too dry. But when you take it, so this would be the full stack of phyllo dough, and then I went and took the whole stack and cut it this way. See how soft it is? It really cuts really easily, and that's that whole stack of the phyllo dough. And then again, did the same thing. Just cut it in thirds in the longer direction, and then that gave me a lot of squares, because the other way to cut it, I ended up with is going to be rectangles, and that wasn't going to work. All right, so there's your phyllo. Phyllo is just really fun to play with. You can do a whole lot with it. You can do what we're going to do with it. You can fill it with all kinds of things. And the neat thing about phyllo is that typically when you're working with it, you would like brush butter on every layer if you're making like baklava or some other kind of like dessert, or spanakopita, which is that stuffed spinach and feta. You don't. You can probably just butter every third layer and still get the crispiness, but it allows you to just cut back a little bit on butter. So I am going to experiment today, and I'll tell you why. All right, you just need a muffin tin. We're going to make 12 of these apple palm pies. I'm only going to do 1 or 2 with you, but you would do 12. And Nadia's original recipe, which made it kind of cool, and it's what kind of like, wow, that's super easy, is she used just cooking spread. she sprayed the tin, and then she would do one layer of the, and I'll show you in a minute, one layer of the phyllo, spray it, one layer spray it, one layer spray it, and then fill it with the apple, and then she sprayed. And I was like, wow, that's so easy. And then I was thinking, do I really want to use that much cooking spray, in something that we're eating? I mean, cooking spray is fine, and I think it's certainly fine to help with non-stick purposes. I just didn't know how I felt about that. So I went out and looked at cooking sprays, thinking, maybe I can find one that doesn't have all these extra additives, and particularly like the silicone that helps with it helps it so it doesn't cake and it sprays better. Now, I grabbed Pam, and then when I got home, I'm like, oh my gosh, Pam is canola oil, coconut oil, and palm oil. Even though it says there's 0 grams of fat, there is 0 grams of fat per, a quarter of a second spray. But it still has coconut oil and palm oil in here, so you're going to eventually get some saturated fat from something like this. So I was like, not crazy about that one, so I put that aside. Then I looked at the Pam butter, and I thought, well, that has a natural flavor. Again, you can maybe pick up a little bit of the butter flavor without using the butter if you wanted to really, really keep saturated fat levels low. And now this one only used canola oil, which was great, so that was better. But still, I was like, I feel like when you make these, sometimes you just don't get a whole lot of flavor out of this. And again, I'm not sure if I wanted to use a spray with everything else that was added. So then I got the organic canola oil from Acme, and this is just canola oil. It's just canola oil, and you apparently can spray it. If you have like your own sprayer and you fill it with your own oil, that would be ideal. I don't. So I tried this, and so what I did was I just sprayed the muffin tins to get started, and it doesn't really spray because it doesn't have that dimethyl silicone or whatever it's called added to it, so you're not going to quite get the spray. So then I thought, well, what if we just went to a little bit of melted butter, right? And how do we do this with maybe just a little bit of butter and a little bit of spray as needed? Just to kind of use a balance. And I was thinking, well, 1 tablespoon of butter is 3 teaspoons of fat. And if you, really use maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons of butter total, which was this I have melted, I think that could work. And you'd still get this crispiness. And that would only be the equivalent of about 1 teaspoon of butter per apple pie, which is way less than what would be in like a slice of apple pie, right? And you might still get the flavor and the crispiness. So this is like an experiment for me because I haven't done this yet with the butter, but I was thinking it through and I thought that might work. So I'm going to just show you basically how. All right, let's just how we do this. So I have these little sheets of the phyllo, and again, you want to keep it covered as you're working, so make sure you have your, it wrapped up in a little bit of, and I'm going to lay one on, just, if you can see, I'm just putting it right just laying it right over top this muffin cup. Then I'm going to take another sheet. These are so darn thin. You definitely don't want to work with phyllo with wet hands, because it'll just melt and stick and get all gloppy. Now I'm just going to lay another one right over that, and then another one right over that. Okay. And I'm just kind of doing it like a little bit more on a diagonal just to get the points. I'm going to cover my phyllo back up again. And turn it over just to keep it covered. Now I'm going to take some of this butter, just a little bit that I have melted. And I'm just going to brush a little bit on here, just in the middle. And I'm going to kind of push down into the center a little bit, just a little bit. All right. Just enough, again, just to give it a little crispiness and a little bit of flavor. Now we're going to take the apple pie filling that we just made, and just enough. We're not going to overfill it, but I don't know, maybe it's 2 tablespoons of the apple pie filling that you're going to put in there. And now we're going to take another sheet of the phyllo dough. All right, let me pull one off. And then I'm going to fold this one in half, and then in half again. So we're just making like a little square, and that's going to go right on top. Now I'm going to take all of this other phyllo dough, and we're going to kind of bring it over together. And then this is going to be our last little brush, a little brush of butter on top. And that's going to help give it the crispness, all right? So all right, so that's that. And then I have this sugar in the raw, or demerara sugar, that's a little bit, it's a little coarser sugar. I'm just going to sprinkle that right on top. And that just gives you a little bit of sweetness and a little crunch, and that's kind of cool. All right, so let's try that again. So I'm gonna take my little phyllo sheet, and we're gonna do about 3. I mean, if you get 4, that's fine. These are really, really thin. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do 4. All right, so we have that. Now we're gonna take, again, a little bit of our butter and just give it a little brush, and we're gonna be pushing this down into the muffin cup. Now you want your muffins, you want these phyllo doughs, the phyllo dough to be big enough to obviously come out over the muffin cup so that you can fold it over. And these are pretty good. I probably could have these just a little bit bigger. So, you know, when you're cutting it, maybe you could just cut it in half, or I went and get ahead and cut it in thirds. All right, so fill that in. Then we're going to take another sheet that we're just folding this one in half. We're going to lay that on top. And then we're going to just kind of take all the phyllo dough and just push it in, make that little pocket. And then again, just a little dab of butter on top, just to give it that, help it to crisp up when it's in the oven. All right, and then a little sprinkle of that sugar. And then you would just go ahead, I'm going to cover this up. Then you would just go ahead and do that with all 12. The easiest way to probably do it and the most efficient would be, I would lay your phyllo sheets on all of your muffin cups. Then I would dab them with a little bit of the butter. And then I would, go back in and fill them with your apple pie filling. Then put the little bit of phyllo on top, fold it all over, and then dab it with some butter. And I really think this would be a great way to get around using the cooking spray. Now, the cooking spray made everything so much easier because you're just spraying everything. And I think this will give more flavor, get the crunch we want, but still kind of, from a health perspective, kind of keep that fat level to a really pretty good healthy place, particularly for dessert. All right, let me show you. So I did make these the other day, but I made these playing around with some of the cooking spray. I did not do this with the butter, but you can see how cute they are. And they're called apple palm pies because they do fit right in the palm of your hand. And they're super, super crunchy. Here, I'll take a bite so you guys see how crunchy they are. They get crunchy on the top. They're not real crunchy on the bottom, but I think they might be a little bit more so because the butter might help that a little bit. But they're really, they really are good. They're not real sweet, as we didn't add any extra sweetness to the applesauce, but there's enough there for the flavor that we want. I think that they're just so cute and so nice. Now you can freeze these, which I did. I made them before, so I froze the extra ones and they're in my freezer. And these are 2 that were frozen, and I defrosted them, and then I just reheated it in the oven for like 10, 12 minutes before before I came on, just to kind of crisp them back up again. And they're just, again, it's just a super fun little thing, something a little bit different to do for the fall. So these go into a 350-degree oven. I'm going to finish these, but 350-degree oven for, 14 to 16 minutes, kind of keep an eye on me. You want the tops to get nice and crispy. They are best warm right out of the oven. As they sit, the bottom gets a little bit softer, but the top stays pretty crispy. So anyway, thanks for hanging in with me on my little change around with this recipe, but I just feel a little bit better about doing it this way. So the recipe that's on my blog though is with the cooking spray. So I think I'm going to go back and edit that and see if you can kind of work around it with the butter. I like these cooking sprays that you can get that don't have anything else added to them. But again, with something like this, you need it to spray, or you're just going to get like a drizzle of oil in one spot on these, and that's really not going to work real well. All right, if you try these, please let me know. I just think they're super cute, and I do have kids. I think they would love it. They could even help. This would be a kind of fun thing for them to help with. All right, I will be back again next week. One simple recipe, one step closer to better health. Again, Judy Matesky with Athens Nutrition. Always here to reach out if you have any questions, and please send me some notes, or if you want to DM me on Facebook, or Instagram, if you want to just reach out, send me some comments, send me some notes. I'd be happy to answer questions that you might have about certainly any of these recipes that I'm bringing to you. All right, stay well. Bye-bye.